Hey boys and girls, it's Mrs. Meredith in the fourth grade. Wanted to make sure that before March disappears that we remember that March is significant for women in that women won the right to vote. And so March is celebrated as Women's History Month. And so with that, as we wrap up the month of March, I wanted to share a book with you about a very important woman in the history of the fight for women's right to vote. And it's called A Lady Has the Floor. Belva Bennett liked to race through fields, chase stray cows, and tend to chores from sunup to sundown with her brother and sisters. Bright-eyed and dirty-faced, Belva was not afraid of snakes or rats or nothing, as she would say. She could hold her own with any of the boys in Niagara County, New York. So there's a picture of Belva, and then her place where she lived. Her town. One of the things she liked to say was, be bold, be determined, and be strong. Take this cover off. There we go. Belva was smart, and at 14, she untied her girlish braids and took a job as a head school teacher at a one-room schoolhouse. Belva led students in spelling and sums. What do you think sums is? Math, you're right. And Belva led students in her spelling and sums, and when payday came, she was shocked to discover that her salary was half of what boy teachers earned. And women, aren't they worth the same as men? Belva spent her whole life asking that question. Has God given to one half of his creatures talents and gifts that are but as mockery wings, but not to fly? Let's see if I can get this so that you can see it. There, that's a little better. Here she is, being the school teacher. It looks like maybe they're at recess. Belva set her sights on a teaching degree, but her father disapproved. What does it mean if a parent disapproves of something? You're right. It means that they don't think it's a good idea. College is for men, he said. No women should go to college. So Belva packed up her bags and wanted to see for herself if she could get in. Though the school discouraged it, Belva enrolled in math and science and politics, classes typically only allowed for men. And when she completed college in 1857, Belva graduated with honors. That means that she did so well, like straight A's, was one of the best students, one of the smartest students in the class. Striking out on her own, Belva taught at schools all around New York, but she didn't like how girls were treated. Teachers wouldn't let girls speak in front of the school or participate in physical activities like gym. She thought it was unfair, unequal, and unacceptable. So here she is at college, a picture painting of the college. And here is a picture of her teaching. Chin up, voice steady, she would tell her students before they spoke, both boys and girls. Belva remembered that reformers she'd heard speak during college, like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who demanded equal rights for women. Maybe, Belva thought, maybe this could change if we began with girls. So she tried an experiment. Belva invited her female students to go on stage beside the boys to deliver speeches, and the whole school listened. It proved a success, and so Belva brainstormed with people like Susan B. Anthony to figure out a bigger plan. Together they pushed for every school in New York to teach public speaking, not just to boys, but also to girls. There's a picture of the public speaking class. And then here she is speaking with Susan B. Anthony or Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Which was it? Oh, it was Susan B. Anthony. And you'll learn more about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton later in your history classes. Belva didn't stop there. Remembering her rough and tumble farm days, she insisted on physical activities for girls too, just like boys. Gymnastics and nature hikes and ice skating and playing outside. Soon all her students were allowed to tumble and trek and glide and hike and play. I believe that a woman should be outdoors just like men. Both men and women could be independent. So there's a picture of the kids, the sun from the windows causing a glare on my page today. Children outside, both boys and girls. She hungered, meaning she really wanted something. She hungered for a bigger stage to talk to more people about this idea. So after the Civil War, she believed that a new day was dawning in our nation's capital. And our nation's capital would be, that's right, Washington, D.C. America was rebuilding and fresh ideas were pushing stale ones away. And so she decided to wave goodbye to New York and she moved to Washington, D.C., lugging her tapestry bags, her heavy trunks, and her big dreams. She wanted equal pay for equal work, and she wanted women to be able to vote. So here she is headed to Washington, D.C. There's the Washington Capitol. There's the big tapestry trunk that it talked about, where she put all of the things that she took with her in her travels. Eager to fight for justice and fairness, Belva applied to law school. But she quickly learned, what do you think? That's right, that the doors were closed to girls. But Belva kept on knocking. And she heard no, 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 over and over and over again, but she didn't give up. Finally, right before she was exhausted and thinking of quitting, she finally heard a yes. Belva and 14 other women pushed through the doors and were allowed to go into those law school classrooms. I always wanted an education, she said, even when I was a little girl. Her lamp burning late into the night, see, they had lamps, using oil because they didn't have electricity like we have. She would read and write and memorize things. But the school blocked women from attending the lectures or the speeches by the professors and studying with men. One by one, the other women began to quit law school because they were so frustrated. And when it came time for graduation, the male students refused to sit by the remaining women who were on stage at graduation. So here they are in law school, going in for the first time. And here they are with the men leaving at graduation because they didn't want to be by the women. Belva hung on, and even when the school refused to present her a diploma, she said, "I will not be squelched so easily." In September 1873, Belva wrote a letter to the president of the university. His name is a name that some of you who've studied the Civil War might recognize. His name was Ulysses S. Grant, and he was also the president of the United States. "I have passed through this curriculum of study. I have followed the rules, and I have studied here. I am entitled to and I demand my diploma." Days later, Belva opened her door to a special delivery. It was her diploma, with President Grant's swooping signature clear to see. Belva stood proud as one of the first women in America to earn a law degree. So here's the president, President Ulysses S. Grant, reading her letter. Here's Belva getting her mail, special delivery. As an attorney now, Belva helped poor widows, Civil War veterans, and freed slaves to fight for what they deserved. But certain high courts refused to let her even argue because she was a woman. Bang, bang went the gavel in the courtroom. "Sit down," shouted the judge at Belva. "Fight, fight, fight everlastingly, not with your claws and fists, but with your wits," Belva would say in response. Belva protested all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land. The justices there told her what she'd already heard before: no women allowed. But she refused to be silenced, and she wouldn't go away. So there's one judge telling her, "Sit down." And then here she is going all the way to the Supreme Court. Belva battled for women's right to practice law in any court. "Nothing was too daring for me to attempt. Over 5 years, she drafted new rules. She worked in Congress, lobbying congressmen to help get them on her side, to get them to argue for some equality of some sort. In 1879, guess what? After all that work, she won, standing tall before the marble columns and the 9 black-robed justices. That means they were wearing black coats or robes. She filled the chamber of the Supreme Court for the first time in America's history with a woman's voice. That was the first time, 1879, that a woman had been allowed to speak at the U.S. Supreme Court. She was bold and determined and strong. A lady had the floor. You can see the justices all sitting there looking at her. It is quite time that we had our own party and our own platform and our own nominees. We shall never have equal rights until we take them, not respect until we command it, nor respect until we command it. So she was arguing that that they needed to fight for what they believed in. And in 1884, presidential election grew closer, and Belva lost patience with her friends Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. If women wanted to vote, they should seize this moment, she thought. So she mailed a letter to a woman's newspaper urging women to take action. The editor, Meredith-you, shared Belva's ideas. Having run for governor of California in 1882, Marietta was ready to see that women would be in politics. Marietta wrote a letter right back. It said that National Equal Rights Party was nominating Belva for president and Marietta as her running mate as vice president. It was September, with 2 months to go for the election. Belva got busy. She jumped onto trains and campaigned from town to town. I cannot vote, she said. Remember, at this time, women weren't allowed to actually go vote, but I can be voted for. Her opponents got busy too, and the men paraded through the streets in bonnets and gowns, making fun of her. Newspapers said she dyed her hair and that she was riding a bicycle, anything they could do to embarrass her. I never stopped fighting. My cause was the cause of thousands of women, she said. Belva ignored them, and she kept right on campaigning because she was bold, determined, and strong. I was ready to stand. It was not for the number of votes I should get, but for the chance to prove that a woman could be a candidate. When Election Day arrived in November 1884, Belva's name was printed in clear letters as a strong statement as any that she could make in a classroom or court. The first woman to appear on ballots for president, she received more than 4,000 votes. It wasn't enough to beat Grover Cleveland for the White House, but it was enough to start people thinking. Bold, determined, and strong, Belva Bennett Lockwood was not afraid to raise her own voice, that means to speak up, so that everyone, girls and boys, women and men, African Americans and Native Americans and widows and veterans and more, could be heard in the classroom, in the courtroom, or in the White House. And then this is a picture of her in a real picture of her. And if you get a chance to read this book, you can read all of this information about her life. Again, this book is called A Lady Has the Floor, about Belva Lockwood, and it is written by Kate Hannigan, and it was illustrated by Allison J. The reason I shared this with you today was because March was a month to celebrate the right of women to vote and women's history and how we worked so hard to get that right to vote. Boys and girls, I hope you have a great end of the month, end of March, and don't forget, make sure you're talking with your friends about getting online and watching this, and make sure that you're sharing with them if they're not on your e-learning work yet, and maybe you can do something to encourage them to get logged in and to get on. Bye.